Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've got one of those stories that everybody has sent me, and it's obvious why. It's also a story I couldn't skip. I've got to talk about this because what I do for a living. So from the Los Angeles Times, Connor Sheets wrote this. Ford has filed a $100 million lawsuit over alleged lemon law scheme by LA lawyers. And so I do practice lemon law, so I've been doing almost exclusively for the last 30 some odd years. But, and I know many attorneys in this field on both sides of the V. I know attorneys at Ford Motor Company, and I know many attorneys like myself who sue the car companies. However, I do not know personally any of the attorneys in this story, which I'll admit is the first thing I look for. I had several people send me the story when I first heard about it. I'm like, oh, I got to read this quick. Is anybody implicated that I know? And there's not. So that at least is something, okay? Ford Motor Company has filed suit against multiple prominent Southern California law firms and attorneys alleging that they engaged in a vast and sophisticated fraud scheme to collect at least $100 million in phantom legal fees under the state's lemon law. I've mentioned before, most states say if you got a defective car, you bought it brand new, the manufacturer can't fix it during a certain time frame, the manufacturer's got to buy it back from you and pay your attorney fees. And so the payment of the attorney fees is what makes it possible for attorneys to take these cases and not make their clients have to pay them, because they say, well, if we win, we'll get the money from them. But of course, when you get the money from them, how do you do that? Well, there'll be a hearing and so on, but we'll get there. In the lawsuit filed recently in Los Angeles federal court, the Dearborn, Michigan-based car manufacturer said that lawyers violated the RICO Act, the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, by working together to carry out the alleged fraud for years, describing the invoices it received from California lawyers as a magical mystery tour of fictitious billings. Ford claimed that attorneys named in the suit took advantage of a statute designed to protect consumers from faulty products, including cars. Under the Song-Beverly Consumer Warranty Act, commonly known as the Lemon Law, automakers are required to pay for legal work, court fees, and related expenses associated with defective vehicles if the plaintiffs prevail. That requirement, Ford says, has created an opportunity for lawyers to pad their bottom line by claiming more hours than they actually worked or reporting having been in more than one place at the same time. The complaint alleges that one attorney was the ringleader of the criminal enterprise and that he and a law firm based out of Los Angeles, where he was a founding partner, orchestrated the scheme. Spokesperson for that law firm said in an emailed statement that the firm denies the allegations in Ford's complaint. This action by Ford is nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to silence firms who would dare to hold them responsible and seek justice for consumers, the statement says. This lawsuit, which makes no claim that our clients were harmed in any way, mischaracterizes the facts, and the claim that billing practices amount to a racketeering enterprise is ridiculous. Requests for comment made via email and cell phone numbers for the attorney listed in online databases were not immediately returned recently. Ford, which is being represented by a New York-based law firm, claimed in the complaint that an investigation uncovered payments of legal fees that reflected work that could not have happened. And you might say, how would you know that? Well, this isn't that complicated. The allegations, at least, aren't. For instance, Ford says that one partner at the law firm billed more than 20 hours per day on at least 66 occasions, and on 34 of those occasions, she billed more than 24 hours in one day. Now, here's the thing. Okay, actually, they listed one highlight. There was one work day in which she is alleged to have billed 57 and a half hours of billable time. So when you are working on a case and the case settles or you prevail at trial, you then ask the other side to pay your attorney fees. And 99 times out of 100, you negotiate something. But if it goes to trial and it's contentious, then you may have to have a hearing. At a hearing, you'll actually put in proofs where you're trying to show the court, demonstrate to the court, what work you actually did in the file and what expenses you spent on the file. And then the other side can cross-examine and all that, and they can argue about both the work that you did, how necessary was it, and what your hourly rates are. And so then a judge will just go, okay, here's what I determined, and the judge will determine a winner. But at the heart of all this are your billing statements. And I know quite a bit about this for a couple of reasons, one of which is I've actually done this before on one of my cases, where I had a case that I won at trial and had to go through the whole process of getting the court to order the other side to pay my fees. And we scrapped over every little thing. And at the end of the hearing, the judge goes, I'm going to award this and this to Mr. Lehto. And there we go. I have also been asked before to review the billing statements of an attorney and then submit my opinion to the court. So I've actually been involved in this on several different angles. Okay, so I understand this quite well. Now, I'll admit I've never done it in California. I'm licensed in Michigan, but I suspect the processes are parallel. So a former prosecutor and a lawyer for Ford Motor Company described how the alleged scheme worked in an emailed statement. So this is what they say. When you look at any single legal bill for a single case, it might show only 1 or 2 hours for a given lawyer on any given day, nothing to draw suspicion. However, when Ford searched across public filings as alleged in the complaint, the conduct in this case was carried out through a sophisticated and unlawful enterprise of attorneys and law firms that spread their fraudulent inflated bills across thousands of cases and against many automakers. The other defendants who benefited from the alleged conspiracy, Ford claimed, include a partner at the law firm I talked about earlier, a paralegal, a former paralegal, and a couple other attorneys and another law firm. Emails and phone messages seeking comment from them were not immediately returned. Contact information for one of the people could not be located. Meanwhile, a former federal prosecutor and partner at the law firm handling this for Ford said the firm's automaker client has been in contact with federal authorities. And you may have recalled a Tom Cruise movie written by John Grisham, the story was, that involved billing statements, and I believe RICO may have been involved, but I could be wrong about that. It's been a long time since I saw that one. Didn't read the book, just saw the movie. Ford reported this conduct to the U.S. Attorney's Office and has been cooperating with a grand jury subpoena served on it in the fall of 2021. Meanwhile, president of the American Tort Reform Association said via email that the alleged fraudulent scheme is an affront to the civil justice system, and these lawyers who have harmed consumers by needlessly dragging out and driving up costs of litigation should be held accountable. Now, Ford said in its filings that the scheme has an informal governing structure that at certain times operated as a command hierarchy, as in a chain of command. The arrangement, Ford alleged, violated the RICO Act, which has played a central role in cases against high-profile organizations, including things like, Italian crime families. So what they are doing here, and I read a whole bunch of articles about this, and what they're alleging here, what Ford Motor Company is alleging, is they're saying, look, we would be working on a case with a law firm. They'd win because we got to buy their car back. They would then submit a bill to us and go, here, pay this bill, whether they did it directly to Ford or whether they did it through the court system. And they say that if you scrutinize the bill by itself, it might not strike you as being that outrageous. However, because Ford gets sued a lot by many of the same people, and other car companies get sued by these same people, that is the attorneys, they said what you can do is you can compare the billing statements to each other and start looking at how these attorneys allegedly are working. And so if you start saying, okay, this person, let's pick a date here, okay? June 1st of last year. Let's note every single thing that this one attorney did on June 1st according to all these different billing statements. And they're saying that when you do that, suddenly you go, oh, they worked an hour here, 3 hours here, 5 hours here, 6 hours, all on the same day. And I saw in one article, I forgot if it was this one or another one, where they said that an attorney claimed to be in two places at the same time. Two different faraway places at the same time. And so those kinds of things make you wonder. Could it be mistakes? Well, people do make a mistake or two, but when you start making that many mistakes. And I can also tell you that years ago, one of the big three automakers, not Ford, so now you're down to two. Figure it out. You got a coin toss in that one. One of the other two of the big three, Chrysler or GM, one of their attorneys contacted me and said, hey, Steve, are you willing to testify as an expert in a case? I said, well, I have before, but it depends. And he said, well, we have a situation where somebody submitted a bill that we believe is fraudulent. And I said, well, is that in the state of Michigan? They said, yeah. I said, well, here's the problem. I go, if I represent clients suing you, can I actually be hired by you as an expert to testify on your behalf against? And he said, my clients are willing to waive that, meaning that they will say, we're hiring you for one thing, but you're not representing us. We're hiring you as a witness. And we're going to hire you, and you can come in and render your opinion and continue suing us. And I looked at it and I said, guys, I can't, only because it's such a small community. And I still think it would be very odd for me to have to disclose to my clients, okay, we're going to sue this car company, but I've testified for them and they paid me a lot of money to testify. So I turned it down. But he did say, he goes, but Steve, for comedy, I'm going to send you the bill. And I'm going to tell you to look at one particular day. And on that bill, there were instances where people claimed to have worked more than 24 hours in one day. And you might say, but Steve, who would be that stupid to do that? Well, if you looked at the bill as itemized, it was itemized. And there'd be just pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff. And they were putting all the stuff in by different people on the same billing sheet. So let's suppose that there was 2 attorneys and 2 paralegals. Line 1 might be an attorney. Line 2 might be the second attorney. Line 3 might be the first paralegal. And would do that all the way through. And he said that he had some of his people, the other attorney did, had some of his people pull this stuff out and just line it up by what each person did. And he goes, and there are days where they claim to have worked more than 24 hours. Now, you might be a hard worker, but I'm pretty sure the most you can work in a day would be 24 hours. And now I will tell you, and I'm not just making excuses for people here, but I will tell you that I've known legal situations where an attorney who's doing defense work had an agreement with his client so they wouldn't get in arguments over stuff that just said, every time you write a letter, you can bill me 0.4 of an hour, roughly 24 minutes for every letter you write. And when you go to court, I'll pay you for being in court, but not your travel time. They had all this stuff worked out. My friend told me, who was representing that client, that when he got the file and it hit his desk, he could pick up his dictaphone, or his recorder that he gave to his secretary, and say, please send our typical opening letter to the following people. Boom, 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 boom. And he'd name the names, put the thing back on, and hand it back to his secretary. And he says, it took me 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds to dictate that. And she'd hammer out 10 letters times 0.4. So he just did 4 hours of billable work in 90 seconds. But that was the agreement that he had with the client. The client understood that. But also there were occasions where it worked the other way around because, like I said, he wouldn't get paid travel time to court, but he got paid to be in court. And so just weird stuff like that. Those things are hypothetically possible. But when you have a situation where, again, these are the allegations. If you have a situation where somebody says, I literally worked 24 hours that one day, it's really hard to believe that, especially when you say, according to the allegations, I worked, 57 and a half hours one day. So the sad part is that the Los Angeles Times, going around trying to get people to give comments and interviews, rounded up a bunch of people who are for litigation reform and lobbyists and so on. And they got people saying, well, this is obviously a reason why we need to do away with the Lemon Law. Well, you understand that there are a lot of laws that have fee-shifting sections in them. And they can all be abused. And we're not going to do away with all of them, are we? And so there's nothing specific about the Lemon Law to this, other than the fact that the actors in the complaint, the allegations are that they're Lemon Law lawyers, okay? But there are other fields of law that have fee-shifting sections in them that can be abused and are abused. This is not a problem with the law. It's a problem with people abusing the law. So I will follow this case as you imagine I will. Like I said before, I do not know any of the people in this case. I do know attorneys in California. I know so many attorneys in this field that it's crazy. And I was kind of shocked, but in a pleasant way, when I realized it was nobody I knew in this story. But it's unfortunate because it will cause people to say, oh, those attorneys are shifty. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. Let's do something. And what's happening here, it'll shake out in court. And like I said, I've been through hearings where a judge heard evidence from me and evidence from my opponent, and we haggled and fought and scrapped over how much money I would get paid in a case that I had won. And that's what happened. But I assure you, I never claimed to work more than 24 hours in one day. So thanks to everybody who sent that from the LA Times. Connor Sheets wrote it. Ford files $100 million suit over alleged lemon law scheme by LA lawyers. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I believe it's better to know nothing than to know what ain't so.